Shalom, shalom to everyone here on the Ways of Israel, Los Caminos de Israel. Obviously, every day is a new day, and obviously, a question that was raised by some people watching some of my videos, in that of another rabbi from Israel who happens to be among those who are very radical. But I understand the question that's being asked. I want you to listen for a second here. You'll find his YouTube page very accessible to many of you. Many of you probably heard him say this already, but I want to make a comment and also explain, unlike what he positions, that in fact it's not as he says. But please listen for 1 second so you know what I'm referring to.
Here in Israel, that's an evil flag. That's not has nothing to do with Judaism, by the way. The white flag and the Magen David, it's not even the Magen David, it's actually the wrong term to say the Star of David. It's not the Star of David, by the way. The flag that we have of Medinat Israel, that's an evil flag. It even has hypnotic powers in it, that if you notice that every time that a president, a prime minister, a general, they're all talking, there's always the Israeli flag in the back. Why? Because it has hypnotic powers, because they're using the triangles upside down. It's not the right way. This is not a holy symbol, by the way. It was holy at one time, it got misused, and now they're telling everybody the Star of David, the Star of David. It's not true, that wasn't his star. It was completely different. The Star of David has 5 tzlaot, how do you call them, angles, not 6. If you turn the flag upside down, it looks like the stripes of the talit. And let's put a Jewish symbol on it, because there were great rabbis that were very against the Star of David. And one of them was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, by the way. He never agreed ever to have the Star of David anywhere that has to do with Chabad. And not all the Chabad people know that even. You know that there's a story that the Lubavitcher Rebbe himself came to one of the summer camps of the girls in the upstate New York, and there was a Star of David in the entrance of the camp, and he told his secretary, remove this before I'm coming in. Remove the star. And the only time he allowed to have a star was on the floor in the Knesset in Brooklyn, where he would step on it. And even most of the Lubavitchers don't even know about that. And you have it on all the synagogues, Star of David everywhere. And it's not only the Lubavitcher Rebbe, there are many other great rabbis that were very against it. We don't want the symbol here. Everybody has it, thinking that that's a holy symbol. It was a holy symbol.
It was a holy symbol. Interesting that Rabbi Yanav makes mention of this, that it was a holy symbol. So when did it become an unholy symbol? When did it come to the point where they now step all over the flag, they step all over the symbol? Let's get some history behind this, because in fact, for me, this flag does not have any hypnotic powers. Adding to the evilness, the wickedness of the flag. And by the way, this type of mindset, and I call it radicalism, is what is creating a lot of the problems in Israel by the Haredim and Haredim. You have groups that basically oppose the very state of Israel. Chabad is one of those that basically have teetered between the Hasidic position of opposing the state of Israel in its entirety, and those trying to work with it in trying to bring about a Jewish state, or increase the idea, not of the state of the Jews, but the Jewish state incorporated in the Torah understanding of it. Now, we're going to look at some definitions here as to exactly what really took place. How did this flag come along? Was it, like he said, an evil design to destroy and hypnotize the whole entire Jewish world? No, my friends, it was a normal process of time. Obviously, the real war at this, the real controversy on this, and I'm going to read something here from my Jewish learning, so you have an idea exactly where we're coming from with the Jewish flag and the whole entire nonsense. Call it nonsense. During the wandering in the wilderness after Exodus from bondage in Egypt, the Jewish people raised banners and flags at Degel in their camp to signify their tribal identity. You'll find in Numbers chapter 2, verse 2. And according to the Midrash, each tribal prince had their own flag, a mapah, of a unique color corresponding to 12 precious stones of the breastplate of Aaron. And you'll see that also in Numbers and in the numbers were about 2:7. Now, interesting is how the one who designed the actual flag, or the concept of it, was Theodor Herzl, the first design of a Zionist flag. They needed a flag to represent the new state of Israel. And as it's written in his diary in 1895, he proposed in the Jewish state 1 year later that it should be done with 7 golden stars representing the 7 working hours of the day on a white background standing for our new and pure life. And this according to Theodor Herzl. Although other Zionist leaders convinced him to accept the Star of David, the Magen David, something that even Nav alludes to, that it was proper, but then it was improper. It was kosher, not kosher. Very confusing statements here from Nav. But nevertheless, the Magen David, the Star of David, the Jewish star, with a 7th star above it. The design was with an inscription of Aryeh Yehuda, the Lion of Judah, and it was embroidered in the center and became the first Zionist flag. The idea of Aryeh Yehuda, the Davidic remembrance of the tribe of Judah, coming back to the forefront. Well, the combination of the blue and white as colors of the Jewish flag was derived from a poem of 1860 of Judah's Color by the Austrian Ludwig August Frenkel, which explained that the blue symbolizes splendor of the firmament and the white represented the radiance of the priesthood. The blue stripes on the Zionist flags were also inspired by Talit. He was right, but he says, they just stuck a star in there. No, they just didn't stick a star in there just to make it look Jewish and create some type of hypnotic trance to the flag. It wasn't done that way. They wanted religious symbolism from the very get-go, which tells you that, in fact, the Israeli flag represents the ideal of the Zionist hopes and dream of a religious Jewish state. So you can't divorce that by any means and call it evil. By you calling evil, you're then saying that, in fact, this symbol, which initially was stated with the idea that it would combine the secular and religious into one and create a Jewish state in which Jewish principles would eventually rule over the land, was something that was already embroidered in the concept, and they were dealing with this from the get-go, as it were. So the religious and ritual symbolism of Jewish life, guided by the precepts of Torah, while the Star of David reflected the very unity of the Jewish people with eventually a Jewish king. The dark blue stripes in the original flags were later lightened to enhance the visibility of the sea. And soon after the establishment of the State of Israel, the Zionist flag became the official national flag, a white rectangle with 2 stripes along its entire length, and Star of David made up the center of the 6 blue stripes, formatting this triangle, as they were said, equal triangle. Now, the Jerusalem flag, if you notice, was really a precursor to it and had its own symbol, also blue stripes, but in the middle it had the Lion of David, the Aryeh Yehuda, the representation of one of the basic flags of that. So that was, even to the states, used in Jerusalem, but not for the whole entire state, being that there were so many different points of view. There was a lot of controversy regarding the Israeli state from the get-go, because there were those who did not hold to Herzl's Zionist concept of the secular become religious, and basically they ejected anything that had to do with the Zionism, because it was based on secular, not religious, precepts. And this was that the Jews needed a state, and therefore a Jewish state. And so that has become the emblem of many of the religious Haredi communities, rejecting the whole idea of the symbol of the flag of Israel, the Israeli flag. But it also became a rallying point to go against the state of Israel, which state was by and large a secular, non-religious state. And here we have a big problem, because even as Anav mentions, the initiation of this flag was something that was looked at as a secular Zionist symbol, not religious at all. Obviously, we know that has been transformed, and today it's seen throughout the world as having religious symbolism, as which was the intent of Theodor Herzl, although you may not agree with that, but in fact, that's what it has become. And this is one thing I see very clearly. Now, he mentioned the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he followed basically, the Lubavitcher Rebbe followed many of the Hasidim of his days, even till they, Satmar, which is a religious, ultra-Orthodox group, doesn't even recognize the state of Israel, and they many times you'll find them along with the Norte Carta, which is an anti-Zionist organization. You'll see them in the streets of New York promoting Palestinian, which is not a state at all, in order just to debunk the state of Israel in every sense. Why is this the case? Why is it such a push to try to destroy the state of the Jews, or the Jewish state? Mainly because they do not see it as the state of redemption, or the state in which can lead to redemption. And because of this, they see it as a pseudo state of the Jews. And therefore, they do everything they can to destroy it, even malign it, even enemies of the Jewish people, in order to see it go down. They would rather have a Palestinian state overhead and be subject unto a state that's not of Jewish control than a government or a state where Jews are in control. And unfortunately, that is today's Judaism. I, for myself and for those, the organization, we are pro-Zionist, biblical Zionism, which means religious Zionism, which means, again, that we do believe this is just a step towards the ultimate and final state, which is the state in which the Mashiach will rule. But there cannot be a Mashiach if there is not a state to rule from. There cannot be a king without a kingdom. And thus, the state of Israel presents the initial platform in which a king can arise and may arise. And this is why I do hold to the symbolism of the Jewish flag. No, it's not hypnotic. No, it's not esoteric mysticism. Although initially you will read that the Star of David, and I'm going to see if I bring that up here for a second here so you have an understanding, that this Star of David was really, how can I say this? Beautiful colors, I'll be honest with you, best designs I've ever seen, sky blue. But the issue of the Israeli flag has put a lot of people into question. The earliest use of the Star of David in Jewish culture had little to do with religion initially. And according to the historian Alec Mishory, the star was originally used by Jewish printers to mark their ancestry, to indicate that they were Jews, to decorate their books, and to differentiate themselves from the competitors, which happened to be Christians at the time. And it was during the 19th century, when European Jews became more integrated with Christian communities, that Jews began to use the star as a religious symbol. Jews needed a symbol for Judaism parallel to the cross, the universal symbol of Christianity. And in particular, they wanted to do something to adorn the walls of the modern Jewish house of worship that would be symbolic, like the cross. And thus, what you see as the Star of David, or Magen David, no matter how you may have misunderstood it, it was formulated with what it is, the hexagon. With this, and internationally, variations of this six-pointed stars were intentionally designed to serve initially as a perversion of the Jewish symbol. And that took place during Nazi as a way of subjugation. And yet we've seen many times that even things, how they forced the Jews to dress in shuttles, was again a imposition by Christianity to try to force them to wear what basically they consider to be priests, like their Catholic priests. And thus the same thing happened with the Jewish star. And then these items of symbols were transformed into actually symbols of being proud to be identified as being the Jew. Interesting enough, the whole mentality that went into this. And as a result, from the ashes of the Holocaust, we see that in fact the Jewish star became prominent in every aspect of Jewish service and worship. You'll find even the Jewish stars back in archaeology, way back till the 6th, 7th century. As a matter of fact, you'll find that the designs were also on the floors of many ancient archaeological findings. So to be able to say that the sign of the star and the flag is evil design, you really need to look at its process and its development, and remove yourself from that mentality that everything is evil if it's not within your viewpoint. Just the opposite. This is why a person who has a bad eye will see everything evil. A person who has a good eye will see everything good. So as you determine how you would look at the Israeli flag will also determine your approach to the state and the Jews in that state. And I see it as a beautiful opportunity to be able to gather around and unite the forces of Jewry worldwide. And this is what it became, both secular as well as religious, and even those who are in between, not decided. But to say that the symbol is evil, and even use such leaders as the Lubavitcher Rebbe in order to try to put your point forward, is also not correct, because the Lubavitcher Rebbe was your typical anti-Zionist, but he had hopes for them that eventually would be able to be transformed. And as years passed by, he always supported Jews in the land of Israel, although he wasn't very fond of the politics and the secular Jews that were involved in the politics and creating the state. And there's so many different books that have been written about this topic, that I think an informed viewer should really acquiesce to that, and not follow these radicalized rabbis online that tries to picture things in a way that everything is evil, everything is bad, everything is diabolical. It becomes sounding very similar to many of the ultra religious Christians, that everything, there's a devil behind it. And my friends, we need to wake up. We need to wake up to the reality and find the truth and find the information and realize it's not the case. The reason the Lubavitcher Rebbe was against the Israeli flag, because it represented Zionism, not because the symbol in itself was evil. And you'll see many of this type of action still in the mindsets of many of these Hasidim till this day, that has not let go of that Narishkeit. They've not let go of that, and they'll burn flags with the Israeli symbol of it, which actually to me is like burning the representation of Jews everywhere, because that's exactly what the state of Israel has become, a state that recognizes every form of Jews. So to do that, to me, is really spitting on, trampling over what basically was the representation. And yet they don't say, oh, don't go to Israel. Just the opposite. They feed on Israel's incredible transformation that has taken place from 1948, in which in October of 1948 they raised this flag to represent the Jewish people and the Jewish state. And now you say this is evil at this time in 2021, that it's evil when you have benefited from the state. And I say this also to those who are involved in the Nitrei Karta. To me, they become Mosarim of the Jewish people, betrayers of the very fabric of what the whole state of Israel was supposed to be. That's my position. That's my opinion. You betray your people when you betray what the value and intrinsic meaning of the flag represent, which is Kalal Yisrael, all of Israel, not just part of Israel, but all of Israel. And when you spit on all of Israel, you're spitting on what God loves. And to me, that's abhorrent. And that, my friend, is very evil, evil to the very core. And here we have, even as a result, that Magen David that started with basically as a result, as the neo-Nazis or the Nazis forced Jews following Kristallnacht in November 9th to wear the Magen David as Jude, Yehudi, Jude, and they had to wear the badge. That badge that was to humiliate them actually was transformed in order to exalt them to what we are today. So the very badge of dishonor became a badge of honor, of great honor to the Jewish people. So I say again, The flag of Israel is not no mystic, esoteric, hypnotic flag that will draw you in. That's a Bubba Meiser, religious, esoteric Bubba Meiser by radicalized rabbis who seeks to destroy the state of Israel and destroy what Israel has given to them. Because some of these rabbis are are in the land of Israel, and yet they're the ones that are destroying the value of that. Obviously, we have problems with the secular and the religious, no doubt about it. But that the flag represents what they're taunting to say, absolutely not. It's not evil. It has become a symbol of good throughout the world. Whenever the nations of the world is needing help, Israel's there. Think about that. Now, the fact that the Lubavitcher Rebbe and other Hasidic groups oppose it and they have a hatred towards it, that's their issue. And I say that's their issue. Why? Because God does what he wants. And just because they don't recognize the divine providence of taking place when they had a chance to do so right after the incredible disaster of the Holocaust, and many Hasidim and religious high-level rabbis declared war against the Zionists, religious Zionists, because they didn't want to recognize that this could be the beginning of a new beginning for the Jewish state and perhaps the beginning of the redemption. Instead, they turned their back on God's will, on God's plan to make things happen. And unfortunately, to this day, as long as you have this mindset, in the mindset of so many religious Jews that are coating black and in the same coats and wears of the Catholic priest, wearing the same dress uniform, you're going to have this. And I'll say that of any of the Haredim that we talked about, of any of them, the one thing I can say about the Lubavitcher Rebbe, that he went beyond the realm that most of his fellow Hasidim were following. He did break away to a certain extent to try to reach out. And the fact that it's mentioned, as Anav says, is an indication that he personally would not give it strength. But nevertheless, Rebbe's no longer involved here physically necessarily, because as it says in our scriptures in Ecclesiastics, that those who leave this world are no longer partakers of this world. Although his memory still lives on, and in fact of his teachings, nevertheless, he physically is no longer here. And that's a whole different issue that may start a whole entire problem with this video. But the reality is, the flag of Israel is not hypnotic. It's not an esoteric evil. It's more like a evil that is a self-seen evil where there's no evil. Yes, there are problems in the state of Israel, 100%, because we're human and there are human factors involved in political. And sometimes you can say, oh, what an evil state. But the bottom line is the good outweighs the bad in this case. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero. Please reconsider the positions of looking at the flag as a symbol of evil. I'm not going to be able to change these people's mind because they've been already brainwashed by their own religious society in such an extent. They cannot distinguish between truth and fact and whatever they've been taught to hate. Evil can be transformed into good, and good can be transformed into evil, but it depends on the eye of the viewer and the ear and heart. And I see a great good in what Israel has done, even what the symbol represents. It's not evil.